If you liked this episode of the Hockey IQ podcast, please leave a like, a comment, and especially review our podcast. If you truly listened all the way to the end and you're listening to this right now, you enjoyed this episode. Please go and give it a 5-star review. That helps us out more than you know. Thank you so much and look forward to the next one. All right. Welcome back with Nick Smallridge. We're doing coaching nuances 201 here. This week, we're going to start with the idea of exaggerating the mistake. So you have a player that does the same thing over and over again. And you're driving yourself mental on trying to solve. Like, here's what you should do. Don't do this. So like telling them to avoid something, you don't want them to lean back, for example, whether it be shooting a puck, shooting a ball, don't lean back. So you're telling them this and you're like, okay, well, get your chest over the puck. That would be a little bit better. Maybe able to do it here and there. Keep their chest over the ball. They might do it, but we're talking now, taking the extra step and like, okay, let's just make this so bad and feel so awful that you're like, well, maybe coach is right. Maybe I should try something different. So in this case, we're saying as we're going through our shooting motion, whether it be hockey, soccer, etc., don't lean back. Well, what if we told them to lean back further? You're leaning back. Why don't you try leaning back just a little bit further and seeing how that feels? So I've got some hockey examples, but Nick, I'll let you start with our soccer example here.
Yeah, so that was an interesting one. I think it came from that very specific example. We had a player who we had had for I think close to a year, and she was a striker and a good little player, but she had this habit when she would get into space and she would shoot, and shots would sail over the bar pretty consistently. And she, was like, oh, I know I'm leaning back, and so it was a slightly different situation because she was kind of aware that was a problem, right? Like she knew that was an issue, and the same feedback that I had, continued to give her, that other coaches were giving her was, hey, building to that like internal focus of attention, you've got to lean forward, you're leaning back, lean forward. And after several months of the same feedback and in various ways, but always trying to correct the mistake of it not working, one day I was just like, almost in like exasperated, why don't you lean back further? And she kind of looked at me and I said, try it. What the issue is, like, but you're not feeling it. You're not sensing it. It's not, what the issue is, and whatever we're doing is not working. So just do the opposite, lean back further. And all of a sudden, we'd go through a few reps and we're just doing some, like minimally opposed shooting, like she receives it. There's a recovery defender coming. So there was a little bit of opposition, but it was for the most part more of like a technical focus. And you can see the discomfort in her trying to lean back. And all of a sudden, after like 2 or 3 reps, you just started to see that kind of adjustment, that sort of self-organization of she recognized it, she felt it. And so it wasn't like I don't want to like qualify this as like, oh, it's the end all be all thing, but like it helped her recognize the ineffective way in which she was doing it, in a way that just knowing it had not been helping. And so, once we kind of saw that, we continue to provide cues. You're doing it again. Lean back. And it helped her kind of recognize, I feel why it's not working, as opposed to just knowing why it's not working. And so that concept of leaning into the mistake is actually called method of amplification of error, where you literally amplify the error that exists in whatever movement pattern or whatever movement solution a player is navigating. And by doing so, it triggers a response where it's like a haptic, I feel why it's not working. And I've done it with a few different iterations. I've used it on my son. He's a very competitive kid, and he gets real upset when he doesn't win. And, the constant feedback that he hears from mom and dad, the feedback he hears from coaches, you got to calm down, buddy. You got to calm down. And it's like, you know what? Maybe you're not taking it seriously enough. I don't think you're taking it seriously enough. You need to take it more seriously. And the look that I get from him is the same destabilizing kind of look that that player gave me when I said, lean back further, because instead of not just knowing the abstract, because he knows, he takes it very seriously, and it's not inherently a bad thing, but the response is more the issue. But by recognizing that, oh, could I pick? Could I be more intense? Oh, maybe I shouldn't be as intense. And so we were literally playing. We went bowling the other day and did the same thing. He was getting too upset. Grandma, grandpa, who were there visiting, said, "You need to calm down. You need to calm down." No, 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 no. Get more intense. I think you need to be more intense, actually. And lo and behold, he was like, just sat down and kind of looked around and was like, "Oh, maybe I am getting a little too intense." So it's a very very like paradoxical way to approach corrective feedback, but sometimes, especially in those situations where, especially when a player knows that there is an issue but can't quite figure out the trigger or the fluctuator to get them out of that habitual pattern, it's just that I think the general idea is explore something else. If the logical cause and effect thing isn't working, what else might work? And I know you have used these in the past as well, Greg. So I'm really curious to hear more about your experience with it, because I think, especially coming from a similar invasion sport, I think there could be some unique ways that you could do this as well.
Well, I want to go down the you should take this more seriously. It's that beautiful like breaking moment where they need to pause and check in with themselves, whether they're so into it that they can't, and just finding a way to like they're taking it like or if like someone's super mad, like you should get a little more mad right now. I don't think you're mad enough. And then they suddenly they're like, oh, okay. Now I'm checking in with myself, and it's like that starts the deregulation process or the regulating process. So it's really good. I'm gonna have to steal that one in a few situations. I'm thinking in my head. And the idea of like the don't lean back, like make it exaggerated to the point of failure, because it's clearly incorrect, and it's around that like finding at the athletic feeling what probably is not what you should be doing. And I find this to be most effective with the players that need to learn their own mistakes. Like you could tell them all the things that are right, but they're just that everyone knows these people in their life where they just kind of need to make the mistake themselves. So how do we help them make that mistake? Well, lean back a little bit further. You know, all of these little things where rather than tell them what's right, which is good for those that are rule followers and want the feedback actively, those that maybe are a little more sheepish to it, really want to make their own mistakes, really lean into that a little bit. Feed them the medicine they need, not the medicine that you want them to have. So I really like that. But I've been working a little bit with a youth team, and they just don't look to pass. Like they just don't look to pass. So then everyone stops going to spots that would make the passing possible and beautiful, and you could really work together. So we're gonna do it again this week. Um, but we started playing 3-on-3 cross ice, but you can't pass the puck. So it was absolutely painful because at first they start playing like normal 3-on-3, and then they go, "Oh, this player can't pass the puck. Why am I guarding this guy?" So then they all start to swarm the puck carrier, knowing that they can't pass, and the puck carrier gets really frustrated, knowing, okay, even if I do beat one, I still got two more to go, and then it just breaks down. Like everything sucks. Like it's just a really terrible situation that you find yourself in, and it's not very fun. So you run that for 2, 3 minutes, and everyone gets wraps. Maybe five total for the full team, and blow the whistle and be like, bring them in. What's the experience? What are you guys experiencing out here? And this sucks. All right. Well, what can make it better? Like, we could be able to pass, coach. Like, oh, okay, let's do 3-on-3. You can pass. And if you go 1-on-1 and lose the puck, you've got to go for a change. So now, one, they're actually looking because they've experienced how bad it feels. And number two, I'm adding a little bit of an incentive. Like, you can go 1-on-1. I'm not shutting that option down. But if you don't succeed in the 1-on-1, you got to go for a change. Like, you can't play anymore. New teammate's going to come in. So it's a good experience for them to understand of like, do I really want to go 1-on-1 here? Do I really want to do that? Or I could pass the puck. and work together and get back open. So I found that to be a highly effective situation. Like, yeah, there's your problem and solutions make it worse, but then also incentivize the thought process of like, do I want to go one on one? What is a situation where I may want to go one on one? Or the really top end, high level players understand of like, okay, now I've got to create the situation where when I do get the puck, the one on one might make sense, and it's going to be a lot easier. The conditions are ripe for taking the player one on one. So the incentives, the feeling bad, I found that to be one example, and there are many others that people can go off of here, where you make it feel bad, you give incentives, you give the constraints, you're still doing it in a game-like situation, an environment that's rich with information, and just get away from them not passing or not even looking to pass. So the next situation we'll go on to, and I know you've talked about this, is like, okay, now we've got to coach the players off the puck, and how does that make the lives easier for the players on the puck? And then it's that we got to get out of the cycle down where there's no passing, so no one goes anywhere, to the situation where it's going up, where okay, everyone's getting open and getting spots where it's like you feel bad if you don't pass because you're like, that's such a great spot that I should absolutely pass this.
I love that. I think there's a couple things that I think are important. And the first is the part that I probably don't do enough of, which is that bringing them in and having that conversation to help them own the process, which we talked about a little bit in our last episodes. If you haven't heard the last episode, check it out because we did talk a lot about that. But that conversation with them, what did you notice? And having them vocalize, oh, just like you said, when I can't pass, I just get swarmed and it's completely ineffective. Well, what do you do instead? Them knowing it and experiencing in that way, but then that second piece of involving them in that, what can we do instead? That is so helpful, I think, in solidifying not just the experience, but then, what comes next? What comes next? If this is the problem and you recognize it now, what comes next? I have done this one in the past where and I'm kicking myself now because I didn't do this at the end. Had them, it was a group of players, a team that they just didn't like to talk a lot, and they were, and not that there's to say that players need to be vocal the entire time, but I could tell that there was not just a lot of communication, verbally or non-verbally. And so I was like, all right, for the next 5 minutes, nobody can talk, can't talk, and they were kind of like, and we'd had like some conversation before about, oh, we need to communicate more, we need to communicate more. So I said, you can't talk. And so for 5 minutes, it was just like, it was the eeriest silence, and it was very, very uncomfortable. And all the players sensed it. I didn't say anything. They didn't say anything. We played the game, and it was kind of just like real stagnant. There was movement, but it was inconsistent. There was not a lot of cohesion. And at the end of it, I was like, see, didn't that feel awkward? And they were like, yes, but I did not follow up with what kinds of communication is beneficial. Where were some moments that you saw where communication would be good? I think it's very important that not only just utilizing that strategy of lean and exaggerate into it, but then taking that and using it as a bridge to what could come next. What solutions could we have, and having that as an ownership process where the players have to own that themselves. Because if I'm the one who's creating the situation and I'm the one who's always problem solving for them, then they don't get that opportunity to do it themselves. So that was those two things stuck out to me quite a bit.
It comes back to the same thing of like the team communication is around and understanding their feedback and giving that moment to reflect, right? It is getting them to attune to the environment, attune to the situations they find themselves in. And how do we get them to help understand what should I do? What do I need? And what is helpful, whether it be making life easier on your teammates, or making life easier on yourself. Because it's an easy game and we tend to make it extra complex.
No, absolutely. I also like the idea of, you had the 3-on-3, but you had, some people on the side. So if you messed up, or if you had the opportunity to do the 1v1, if you didn't, you had to make a change. I think that's an interesting one as well, because, you have your players on the sidelines, and you want them keyed in on what's happening, and they have to be attuned to exactly what's going on as well. Because if they know that, oh, if that person doesn't make the one-on-one, I get to go, I'm going in immediately. They have to be mentally engaged. As you mentioned that I see a similar thing oftentimes with like, we'll play like 3v3 plus three, and we'll have our three neutrals like on the outside. And a lot of times we'll see a situation where if that neutral is on the outside and like, oh, they don't have to use me, then I don't really have to stay engaged. And so, ways to combat that are, you can require to use a neutral before you can score. But I also like that idea that you just had, where if you make a mistake or if you lose possession, you immediately have to switch with a neutral player. That is going to immediately keep those neutral players invested in a way that you don't have to use them, but they have to be engaged and be prepared to step on the field to get back into it. I think that's a good one as well.
Just like a positional rotation. Like in order to go from in hockey, I like to keep the net in the same spot as much as possible. It's a positional rotation where in order to go from defense to offense, this player needs to be activated. And activated means you could pass the puck and they pass it back. It could mean they grab it and they go. It could mean off the puck, someone just goes into his space and he now joins the playing area. Never touches the puck, but he's been activated. So just different ways to understand that, and we're attuned to like, oh, I have the puck, I have teammates. Where should I be going? Where should I be looking? And then also trying to locate those players in areas where they're most likely to be found. So for our team system, we have them in those spots. So now we've got rotations in and out of those spots. So like for me, it's like one, hockey's cool because you change on the fly all the time and there's no like stoppage. Okay, now you're allowed to make the change and here's your board to letting you know who's coming in and out. So you're constantly needing to be aware. And then the second piece is if that player's not aware and active and doesn't have their stick on the ice and the puck, like those players are jumping on that player of like, what are you doing? And just always locked in, as you say, and focused, I think makes a lot of sense. And how do we, because I hate as much as possible, avoid that you have to do this. There are some rules where you have to do this, but realistically, how to just as much set up the incentives. Or even like
No,
the rule where you have to activate this player, but like there's so many options in order to activate it where there's extra decisions. So it's like, oh, I have to do this. The classic in hockey is we play 3-on-3 cross ice and you got to make three passes before you take a shot on that. Well, good, but is the pass the right thing? Yes or no? I mean, half the time kids stop playing hockey, make three passes to each other, and then they go actually play the game. So I struggle with that because is the end all that you mentioned was like you just attuning to the environment, understanding, and this is where it goes a little bit more philosophical, of like knowledge within the game, experiential learning, as you would say. So you have that knowledge in the game rather than just knowledge of the game from the coach, seeing it eye in the sky type, and just making sure that we're attuning to the right information, the right areas. Like, what am I looking for? Am I looking for teammates? Am I looking for opponents? Am I looking for space? What are the things I'm looking to play fast that I need to have in my mind? I need to obviously look and have the information, but once I look, what am I attuning to? What am I seeking? It's the geo guesser. I love that game. Player sees it for zero point 0.1 seconds, like, oh yeah, it's Bermuda grass, and it's this little road in this farm over here, just based on the key information. But they know what they're looking for. They're not just trying to take in the whole picture. It's that attunement to the right information.
we had a moment a few weeks back when we were doing a possession, and we had players on the outside, and you could pressure those players. So if the player on the outside received it, the opponent could pressure them. And we had I know this situation came up several, like three or four times, where the player on the outside would get it and it wouldn't be a clean touch. The ball would be kind of bouncing and their head would go down. And immediately for me, that's the cue. Head goes down. That's the time to really step in. And the player who was defending the outside player would kind of wait and just kind of see what they were going to do after they got possession, after they cleaned their touch up. And it was that pause, and it's like, okay, what are we trying to do right now? You are the team out of possession. What are you trying to do? We're trying to win the ball. Okay, well, how do we do that? Well, we could tackle, intercept. I was like, okay, what do you see or what do you look for when you have to make that decision? Like, what's the information that you're looking for to help make that decision? When do I intercept, or do I tackle? And it's like, if I'm you and I see this player who is not looking up and is looking down and does not have possession of the ball, what is that going to tell me? Like, well, I could probably step in and pressure and maybe make a tackle. I was like, okay, try that out, see what happens. And so, aligning that with, what is the information in the environment, and it's not a like requirement. You don't have to, but you have various ways in which you can defend, and there are certain triggers, certain cues that are going to be more effective, that are going to align with what decisions would be better. So what do you see? And then secondarily, like if you see that if you are the first offender and the player in possession is bobbling the ball and that first defender steps into tackle, if I'm the second defender, what am I going to do? What is going to happen if they win it? Where do I need to be setting myself up to support that player to keep the ball? And so, attuning to those the environment, those external focus of attention cues, I think are massive. Cycling back to the whole idea of method of amplification of error. As I'm talking about that in this situation, it's like what would happen if I were to have told that player, you cannot tackle, you are not allowed to make a tackle? Would that have changed it? It's like, what's the right cue with the right time for the right player? Yeah, this makes it so much. This is why this hockey and soccer is so much fun. It's just endless engagement.
Yeah, so much good stuff of this. Um, Turning back just a little bit more, another thing I want to just talk touch on as we're kind of talking about team and working together of this as well. It's just like the idea around deliberate learning. So I find that coaches are getting better. Maybe I'm just getting in tune with the coaches that are doing it well. Are getting good at creating quality learning environments. But there's the second piece, which is the learner in the environment. So we can help them along the way, but also what are the tools that they need to become good learners? So one of the ways I think is helpful is deliberate learning from others. So deliberate learning from teammates. So if you're a shooter and you love to shoot and score goals and all that, go talk to the goalie on what makes their life really difficult. Go talk to the defenseman of how are they trying to play you? These I think these ideas of like, okay, either one, they're going to give me direct tips that I can try and mess with, or number two, now I'm understanding like what is difficult for them. So how can I set them up for those difficult situations? So how do we learn from the other position? Someone who's on the opposite side, which if you want to be a great goal scorer, probably go sit on goalie meetings. You want to be a great defenseman, go sit on offensive meetings. Like, what are they trying to do to you? And understand like how can I nip this in the bud? How can I play these situations well? And understanding from a different perspective what's going on. And that's why in youth hockey and youth soccer, it's great to play so many positions and try everything out because you get those different vantage points. Some of my best wingers, I had them playing defense at one point, or some of my best defense, I had them playing winger at one point. Well, you're a winger. You don't want rimmed pucks all the time. You'd like them right on your tape, good passes on your tape. And sometimes it takes the extra stride and it's easier to be lazy and do the rim. Well, if you know that's going to be a painful experience for your teammate and winger, maybe you're willing to take the extra stride to actually put it on the tape, knowing that that's what's best for the other person. I kind of call it the tactical and technical empathy. Like, how do you make the life easier for your other teammates in that situation? Um, versus understanding what feels good to me may not always be the best for the regular team players. And I've got one player I currently have on JV, and this is pretty much their entire problem is I've got my area, it's clean and great, but then the giving of passes is always killing play, killing possession. You're putting pucks in a worse condition. We call it improving the condition of the puck. So it would be soccer, improving the condition of the ball. How do we make it easier and better so we improve the condition of play, condition of the ball, condition of the puck, rather than degrading it? And that's currently his issue is a lot of his puck touches, like the passes aren't always flat, like they're constantly rimmed, or he just chucks it out and now it's back to the other team rather than owning, making it easier on the teammate and figuring out like, okay, and then what? I do my job and then what's next? the what's next, the what if play, or the now what play. So, I got to dump a puck in. Do I do it early, or do I wait till I draw someone in and I allow my teammates to maybe get a change? And now I'm putting a puck into speed where now there's pressure, and we continue the next phase of play where we still have advantages in our conditions of the puck and conditions of play.
No, I think, that starting with the deliberate learning, I heard this quote the other day, kids are great learners. They're going to learn something about whatever situation they're in. Are we putting them into that, as you mentioned earlier, the quality learning environment that's going to help them have the knowledge in as opposed to knowledge of, by being able to experience those specific situations and ways in which, you know, is this improving the condition of the ball? What happens if you do X? What happens if you do Y? Which one is more likely going to be successful, not only for you, for the team? I think you see this a lot of times in youth soccer, and it's not very helpful where it's like you are a U9 player and you are going to be the goalie on this team, and that's what you're going to do. That's your job. You are going to play defense, and that's what you're going to do on this team. And it's like they're going to learn something, but they're also going to be missing out. Are we opening the door to those different perspectives of, hey, yeah, goalie might be your favorite thing, but sometimes you need to play forward. Why? Well, what happens if you are the forward and you get to be the shooter against the position that you generally like to play? What is, you are not just going to know about it or of it, you are going to understand in the game. So, are we setting our players up for success by creating situations where they're going to be more likely to learn by having opportunities in different situations? Um, I think when you only have that one perspective, I'm only ever playing this. It's going to become fragile because you're going to miss out on cues to do things that you might otherwise have recognized if you were to have played on the other side of the spectrum. If you're not just always the defender, but sometimes you're the forward, you're going to recognize, oh, when that defender steps forward out of their position, it creates space behind them that I can attack with my run or with a dribble. Oh, when I go back to playing defense, maybe that's going to change how I approach that same situation. Maybe I'll hold and try to protect the goal, deny the finish, as opposed to try to win possession as quickly as possible in that defensive situation. And it's not like I have to tell them to do it. They know it inherently because they've experienced it themselves. So, I think as coaches, most kids are good learners. It's how are we creating situations where we can tap into the habits that they already tend to have, and conversely, open the door for new habits that they might not otherwise have experienced.
Perfect place to end this episode, and we'll tee off the next one on common coaching errors, some things that we think might be helpful but are really detrimental to what we're trying to accomplish, and some just general coaching stuff. So stick around for next week or 2 weeks from now when we release episode number 3 here on Coaching 201, getting those coaching nuances.
That concludes this week's episode. Thanks for joining us here at Hockey IQ. If you haven't already, take a quick moment to hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and drop a review. If you want to be a great teammate, even recommend us to a friend. You can follow us at Hockey's Arsenal on Twitter and Instagram. Check out the website, hockeysarsenal.com, where you can subscribe to the weekly newsletter. You won't regret it. Catch you buttes here next week for a brand new episode.